classroom teaching. How can I communicate with my students? How effectively can I teach? How do I know students are learning? And most important, how do I document the learning? I know we are all going through different NAC experiences. So the most important component comes down to that. How do I document that my students are actually learning? Well, to answer that, let's look at it. Why online teaching? The most important thing is that now we are living in a virtual world. The world is constantly reinventing. So, what was there yesterday is now already obsolete and it keeps changing. And the physical boundaries are disappearing fast. So, sitting here, I can attend a course which is being conducted in Philadelphia or any corner of the world. And I don't need to have a four wall or I don't need a blackboard to be doing the learning or doing the teaching. Most importantly, the generation X and Y to which we belong and our seniors belong have to now teach the generation Z, the current generation, and generation Alpha, which are there in our houses, the younger ones who are there, no, they'll be the generation Alpha. And we know how quickly they can adapt to an online learning platform. So we have to gear up to handle them. So, like I said, you get access to top quality education globally because of online teaching platforms. And what was previously a choice is now a necessity. So, the faster we get up, the better off it is for all of us. How does this work when compared with classroom teaching? Now, traditionally, when I teach, I will be having a blackboard and all that. But with an online teaching, I have a flexibility of time. I can schedule it beyond working hours too. I can avoid the classroom sitting. There is no need for me to have four walls there. I can put up a pre-recording of my presentation or I can go live like how we are doing it now. And our students can go in for repeated watching of it. It's an individualized learning. So any student, if they cannot understand a particular segment, they can always come back to that portion and learn. And we can use anytime, anywhere, any device, like how we are using different devices to access this video today. So this is how we can go about. And it's very cost effective. You can have an excellent speaker, highly engaging content being produced at minimal cost and being shared at a vast set of students there. Course creation. So every time, every year when we are going to talk to the students, we'll have to end up preparing and doing all the basic segments. Here, there is no reinvention of the wheel, especially if you have a learning management system, you already have the contents already on board. So, and you can go on enriching the content rather than having to reinvent it or start it from scratch. So you get to involve all the senses of the students who are engaged in learning. That's a visual, you have the auditory, you have the reading, and can involve the kinesthetic. And most importantly, you get to analyze how your students are learning. So when you know how your students are learning, it becomes easy to assess them and give them feedback. So this is how it is beneficial. There are a couple of challenges there. The most important being the student needs to have self-discipline and motivation to learn. If you have a self-directed learner, what you expect from adult learners? I just request all the other participants to go on mute, please. Thank you. So if you have a self-directed learner, basically the adult learners, then it becomes so much easier. The basic limitation with an online platform is the absence of social interaction in terms of a physical presence and a face-to-face communication. It can be overcome to some extent by using a combination of the systems. So post-COVID, we will be going back to classroom teaching, but we will also have an online teaching as well. So you're going to have a component of blended learning which is going to be coming. So how can I communicate with my students? We use different video conferencing apps, right? So a few of them which we are very familiar with. We know FaceTime, we know WhatsApp video call, we know Skype, Zoom, and Google Hangout. Beyond these video conferencing options, there are a few others which are meant for specific conferencing purposes only. Like you have Google Meet, Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams, GoToMeeting, BlueJeans Meeting, BigButton. I just listed a very few set here. There are a lot more available. So you will have to figure out what is going to work in your context. You can even communicate via social media, which our students regularly use. You can use WhatsApp or Telegram. You can use Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So they have the option of going live. And now Facebook and Insta and YouTube are looking at the possibility of screen sharing. One of the limitations of this social media platform is that it does not allow the audience to ask questions verbally in terms of like raise an audio question. So they can basically write, type, and respond in the chat box. So that's the only thing. But other than that, it is very accessible. You can also have Google Groups wherein you can be sending across a lot of messages at one shot. How can I teach? Is there something different? Well, this is something which Dr. Anshu is going to handle in depth. But to be very brief, so you can teach using your traditional method of chalk and talk and PowerPoint. But in addition, you also have videos, digital resources, simulations, virtual tours, virtual reality, augmented reality. There is no limit to what you can handle. So there is a new component which we need to be aware of. That is the concept of flipped classroom, wherein the students are going to come prepared, and our discussion room is where we're going to have a component we discuss in detail. This is going to augment the learning process. So interactions, like I said, you can have it in the chat box, or you can have it as a voice message. The messages, the questions raised can be anonymous, or it can be made public. This is a very important question. How do I know that my students are learning? I'm teaching, but how do I know that you're all listening? How do I know that you're all adapting to it? Like we do everywhere else, assess the students' learning. So traditionally, what do? We ask questions, we give assignments, we conduct a test. So what can you do on an online platform? So here, you just have to, apart from that, you can take a quiz, you can take a quick poll, you can ask them to share a video of e-learning, you can do mind mapping. There is no limit to what can be done. It's expanded only with our creativity and imagination. At the end of this presentation, I'll just quickly take you to a couple of resources which are available. So those who are interested can further explore the options which are available for assessment. And next session, which will be conducted, is going to go in depth into how to do this assessment. So the next component is, like I asked, how do I document the teaching, attendance, and assessment? So traditionally, what do? We have an attendance register, we calculate the percentages and maintain the records. This whole thing, when done online, becomes your learning management system. So how does a learning management system function? What are the advantages and all that? Dr. Anshu will be discussing it. So I'll just mention a couple of names, the LMS, which is currently available. You can explore them. So the most popular being Moodle, and then you have Google Classroom, Open edX, Canvas, EduMe, LearnUpon, Adobe Captivate Prime. So there are lots of options available. So you can have them free, you can have them licensed, you can have them as open source, like how Moodle is, etc. What do I have to say at the end? We have to catch up with Generation Z and Alpha and not let the generation gap widen. An effective teacher is always valued and respected. Online teaching is never going to replace an effective teacher. So wherever we are, as long as we are effective, we are always valued and respected. We need to respond positively to the change and adapt. Like most of us did. We did not have any prior information about online teaching, but most of us have started taking classes online because of the necessity which came in there. So let's learn a little bit more. We need to get out of our comfort zones for sure and explore, learn, unlearn, and then grow along with our students. So this is how we need to be doing about it. So there are a couple of online resources. I'll just take a minute more. Now, this is a very nice resource which I found. I hope this is going to be visible on your screen right now. So in this website, they have listed all the different, one second, I'll just see that it is being visible to you all. Yeah. So they have listed the different tools which are available for digital teaching. So you can just go through this one here. See here. So if you just click on any of these, you will be able to understand what that resource is and how you can access it. Kahoot is a pretty popular quiz-based game which is being used. Peer Deck is something which is being used to enhance your PPT presentations. So like that, there are multiple apps which are available. So we need to be learning how to use them. Just a second while I get back to my presentation. Apart from that, we have a directory of learning performance tools. And those who want to enhance their learning can connect with MEU India. So they conduct e-learning courses regularly. So you can join in over there. You can also become a member of the Academy of Health Professional Educators India. They're conducting regular seminars and programs for enhancing our teaching quality. So you can participate in these programs. There is an upcoming conference which is going to be held in Amritsar in November. So you can take part in these health professional education conferences. So I'll be very happy to take any of the questions at the end of the session once Dr. Anshu is also done with it. So thank you, IAPHD and Dr. Pushpanjali and Dr. Vamshi Krishna Reddy for giving me an opportunity to present over here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jyotsna. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So just let me share my screen here. 1 second. At the outset, I'd like to thank Dr. Pushpanjali and the Indian Association of Public Health Dentistry for giving me an opportunity to speak here. Jyotsna has made my task very easy by giving you a compact module and telling you a little bit about what online learning is, so I can focus on my topic here. Now, we've all been thrown into this situation where all of us have to, whether we like it or not, experiment with online learning. For those people who have been prepared with it uh, previous to the onset of this pandemic, it will be much easier. But those people who are starting now will have a number of starting troubles. Um, One of the most disturbing things for a teacher is to enter a lecture hall and see a number of apathetic faces, to see people not interested in attending the lecture. Um, and now, when we are thrown into online learning, where the most important feature of uh, having a lecture, which is face to face contact or maintaining eye contact, is missing, it becomes even more difficult to know whether students are being are interested in your lecture or not. So my topic today will be focusing on the modalities for student engagement. For this session, I would recommend that you all get download a QR code reader on your phone, because I might give out some resources at the end of it. And I think most phones have it, but if you don't have it, you can download one from Google Play while I go ahead with the slides now. Now, before I go ahead, I want you all to help me with knowing where you all stand, and let's all have one basic understanding of what student engagement is. So I would like you to use the chat feature and write here, what do you understand by student engagement? Are my slides visible to you?
Yes, Dr. Anshu, it's visible. I think we need to go on slideshow mode.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the chats to come in.
Yeah, ma'am.
Can one of you? Okay. So
Uh,
I'm hearing it's a two-way interactive learning process, active engagement. I'm hearing that word active again and again. Okay. Didactic. How many of you agree it's didactic? Making students learn actively. Okay. Student involvement, active learning. I'm hearing these words again and again. Okay. So, right, let's get back to the presentation. 1 second. So basically, when you say student engagement, we are talking about a process where there is a two-way interaction between the teacher and the learner. And this model that you're seeing is called the double helix model of student engagement, which says that student engagement is a product of two things. It is a product of motivation and active learning. And this is along a spectrum, it is along a continuum where you have both motivation and active learning. When I say motivation, it means that the student must want to learn, which means that you must be able to create some kind of enthusiasm in the student for learning. And the reason why enthusiasm is important is like an enthusiastic student will always put in more effort. He will pay more attention in the class. The second, as I heard all of you say, is active learning. So I'll come back to it and I want you to think about what exactly you mean by active learning. But basically, what we want to do when we say active learning is we want the learner to engage in the, or rather engage with the content here. By activity, I do not mean anything physical, but the student has to do something. When I say active learning, think of maybe a chess player who's sitting still in one place, but the person's mind is working fast, strategizing, analyzing. So whenever you take a class, even if all the students are sitting in your class quietly, and the usual style is when we are hierarchical teachers, we say, sit down quietly, don't talk to anybody. And that of course, thankfully, is changing now, where we allow students to work in groups. But even then, when we say active learning, we are expecting the student to engage constantly with the content and to analyze, to increase his understanding, and to reflect. So all this comes together in your definition of active learning. So when you say student engagement, you're talking about the interaction between motivating your students and also to bring them to active learning. Now, I'd like to break one myth here. The moment people say online learning, what happens is people get very enthusiastic about different kinds of technologies. Now you have Zoom, now you have Moodle, now you have WebEx, you have so many other Google Meet. Now, people think that anybody who's technology savvy can be a good online teacher. But I'd like to bring you back to the point that technology is merely a tool for pedagogy, and treat it like a tool. Don't allow technology to dominate you. The focus has to be on the student, the focus has to be on the learner. Technology is only your slave. So, what you do in an online classroom is quite similar to what you do in your classroom, where you want the focus to remain on the student, you want the student to learn. Now, how you do that is by the different audiovisual tools in the classroom. Here, it is by using different technologies. But in any case, whatever technology you use, we expect you to be very familiar with that kind of technology. So, my advice to you here would be, even though you have a huge cafeteria of choices, you have so many tools. If you are a beginner, start with one tool and learn it thoroughly. There are enough, what should I say? There are tutorials available, there are YouTube videos available, there are user guides available. So you can enroll in courses and learn any one system properly and use that system, learn it well, and only then jump to another one. So the moment you start using too many things at the same time, whatever happens in your bad classroom where you don't know how to use PowerPoint and you're using PowerPoint, when you don't know something and you're jumping into it, the same mismanagement occurs on the online classroom. So my learning objectives at the end of this session will be to identify the basic principles of student engagement that you need during online teaching, to plan online sessions judiciously. Remember, online sessions are not just about starting off with online lectures. Whatever you do has to be planned. A proper lesson plan has to be there, even for online teaching, and how you can apply some synchronous and asynchronous techniques of student engagement. Most of you will be familiar with this picture. It is from a parable which says there were 6 blind gentlemen who went and tried to explore and find what an elephant is. Now, this gentleman here palpated the body of the elephant and thought it was like a wall. There's another who felt the trunk of the elephant and thought it was like a snake. The person who touched the tusks felt it was like a spear. The person who put his hands around the leg felt it was like a tree trunk, and the person who touched the tail felt it was like a rope. Now, each of these blind gentlemen had their own understanding of the same thing. Now, imagine a situation where all these six men came together, sat together, and discussed what they learned. This collaboration would have probably given them a better idea and they could have constructed more meaning out of this. So, this is the concept of the community of inquiry. A community of inquiry is a group of individuals who have to collaboratively engage in purposeful or critical discourse and reflection to construct personal meaning and confirm mutual understanding. I think it's important for students to collaborate with each other. Otherwise, it's easy for them. All the material is available online. They have their textbooks. Why do they need teachers? Why do they need other people around? The reason why we have colleges, why you have schools and universities, is that learning is isolation, is no fun. The important satisfaction of learning comes from being with other people, from engaging with them, from learning from each other. And that is the important principle of community of inquiry and of constructive learning. So it's important, even in the online setting, to have collaborations with students, even though they are probably not in the same place, and also with the teacher. So I'd like to focus on this framework, which is called the Community of Inquiry Framework, which is given by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer. They are from the University of Alberta in Canada. And they said to give a good educational experience, three elements are necessary. And these three elements are the cognitive presence or engagement with the content, the subject matter. The second is the teaching presence or engagement with the teacher or the instructor. And the third is the social presence or the student presence, which means how do students engage with each other. So you have to look at a lot of things when you're talking about giving a good or a effective educational experience. One is the content. How do you break down that content into things that people can assimilate? How do you break down and simplify the content, which can be digested easily by the students, which means how you break things down. The second is the teaching presence, where the teacher selects the content. He sets the environment. So if your students are going to be scared of you, they're not going to ask questions. If the environment is where you're very strict, they will simply sit blank in class. But it's up to a good teacher to bring about interactivity, to make the environment friendly, where students feel comfortable in asking questions and clarifying their doubts. And the third, which cannot be discounted, is social presence, where students need to collaborate not only with the content, but also with each other. So learning from students, the teamwork is something you need in your subject, whether it is dentistry, whether it is medicine. We all need teamwork. And where we start learning teamwork is in the classroom. So these are the three elements which are important. Um, so the rules remain same, whether it is a classroom or whether it is the online platform. On your left, you can see a classroom, and on your right, you can see the online classroom. The rules remain exactly the same, but it's what happens is when you start teaching, you're more focused about whether I'm able to complete my PowerPoint in that much time, and you forget all the other rules. So the important thing is, even though you don't have eye contact with others, you need to be uh, in a position where you are able to remember all those rules and apply them. So I'm going to go in through the three elements one by one. The first is how do you enhance the cognitive presence online? So Jyotsna has already outlined all the synchronous methods. Synchronous, by synchronous, I hope all of you understand. The teacher and the students are online at the same time. So you have a number of things which can help when both of you are online. But while you're doing this, I want you to remember, do all the students have similar access to e-learning? Think about equity. Equity is where you have to see, you have to be fair to everybody and see that access to everybody is equal. When we started e-learning, we realized that students, all of them did not have laptops. Most of them were accessing them on smartphones. And even when it came to smartphones, when we started taking lectures, they said, we have a problem of data. After two lectures, the data is finished. so we can no longer be there. There are questions you need to take care of. So when you sit down and plan your lectures here, you might be enthusiastic that your department is great. We are going to take 2 hours of lecture. But also think about what is the cognitive overload on the student when you have 3 lectures one after the other. In a classroom, it's impossible to concentrate for even 20 minutes. Now that you have been overloaded with webinars yourself, you know it's difficult to concentrate, especially at this hour when it is just post lunch and all of you are enjoying your Saturday siesta. um, I don't blame you if students, I don't blame students if they fall asleep. So how do you know whether what is the cognitive overload? So you need to sit in with your other departments and decide how much work will you give them, how much time online do you want actually face to face, and how much of it can be asynchronous. We find that asynchronous learning is feasible in most situations. So we sometimes do this. We use Moodle at our institute. So we have recordings for the students. So if they don't not able to attend at that time, they can go back and listen to the recordings at a later duration. The second myth is that online learning means online lectures. No, it doesn't. There are a number of ways in which you can do online learning, and online lectures are just one of them. What you can do is use asynchronous methods, which means you can send reading material online, or even tell them read from page number this page number this from your textbook, and then you can have the discussion. This discussion can be something as simple as having a discussion on email. It can be having a discussion on WhatsApp, or a Facebook discussion if you're on a closed group. Anything is possible. You could assign a video to watch and then give an assessment to see whether they've actually learned from it. Uh, it need not be a video that you create yourself. YouTube and other sources, the internet is full of good educational videos. If you don't have facilities, there is nothing wrong in going and choosing something which absolutely suits you. Sometimes I do this, and when I find it that the students do a very good job, where I don't teach, I ask students to teach. I divide the topic to different students, ask them to teach. I sit in the background and facilitate the discussion and see that whether they're going on track. And sometimes I ask them to conduct quizzes, and the quizzes are a good mode of learning because for each question, even the wrong answers are discussed. So why are the answers wrong? So it initiates good discussions there. Another way is to go on a scavenger hunt online. And this means you give them a topic, ask them to go online and search for good resources, and good websites where you can get good material. Now, once they come back, you tell them to say which is a credible resource, which is not. When we were students, the basic focus used to be transfer of information. But now students are swimming in information. So what they need to learn is, how do I know which is credible information? How do I separate the wheat from the chaff? So these skills, the effective critical analysis skills of knowing what is a good source, what is not a good source, is something you teach them. And going on a scavenger hunt is something you can do. You can give students resources, maybe some websites, maybe some YouTubes, maybe some pages to read, and then ask them to synthesize that information. Remember Bloom's taxonomy, where we are talking about higher levels of understanding. And students these days get bored when you're simply repeating what is there in the textbook. They can read that themselves. So what you want them to do is to understand what they have learned and reflect that learning in a project or an assignment that you give them. So you could give them, if you don't have clinical cases at the moment, you could give them a paper case with maybe a video, maybe a photograph, and then ask them to study about that case and use the time online to have a proper discussion. It's sometimes when it comes to ethical issues, you can have a debate. A wiki is a situation, is a product where all the students combine together and create a document. Um, Students come up with very creative wikis. And another thing is you ask them to write reflections. This is something we have done extensively at my institute. And reflection writing helps students a lot in thinking more, analyzing what they're feeling. And it is something that every health professions graduate needs to know. So this is a small, the starting module that we tried off, if it was diabetes. So if you see, even though it is an online module, it has a structure. We've given them resources, we've given them animations and videos, and then followed up with an assessment. And also this thing, ask your questions. So the teacher has to be available there for people to sit there and answer their questions. This is one of the paper cases that we used. So we don't, when we don't have a real case, what we can do is use a paper case. Um, so I'd like to ask you, I would like you all to respond on chat. So other than online lectures, what are the different modes of content delivery that you've all used? Is the question clear? So I want to know what is your experience been about the different ways in which you have delivered content to students in online classes. Okay, videos, quizzes, discussion of question papers, good. Assignments, yeah, they have different online platforms, shared PDF, email projects. So you've all been doing a lot. Good. So let's go ahead. So I'm just adding to what you all already know. Maybe you already know this. There are some of these apps and online tools available. If you have a Google account, you can go back and see that you have a Google Slides link there. Now with Google Slides, you can download what an add-on called Pear Deck. Now, Google Slides will not is quite like PowerPoint, but it won't work with your old PowerPoint slides. You have to create new Google Slides, and then with Pear Deck, what it allows you to do is you can create an interactive presentation where you can add MCQs, and when you're presenting, you project that MCQ, and the student can answer the MCQ right there. Sometimes you feel that you have done a very good job of explaining a concept, and when you put the MCQ, you find that half the batch is given you the wrong answer, which tells you that no, I need to go back and explain something because most students have not understood this thing. Or you can ask a yes no question, a true false question. You can ask people to draw something. You can ask people to write something or mark a dot. So you can go and explore Google Slides. It's free. You need to download this add-on called Pear Deck. There are two online tools. One is called Edpuzzle and the other is called PlayPosit. Now, what this does is you can pick up any video, whether it is on YouTube or any other video. Now, sometimes you find that a video is in a different accent and probably you want to explain something else. So these two tools are similar. They give you facilities where you can go and you can explain in your own language or add your own comments. You can break the video in different parts and add your comments there. Second, you can actually cut out what you don't want and customize your video, or you can put in assignments within the video. Like watch 10 minutes and then there is an assignment there asking you what you did not learn, what you learned, and if they did not, ask them to go back and watch the video again. So this is the two things where either your own video or a video from elsewhere can be used to embed questions and assignments and give them opportunities for reflection. Now, coming to the second point is how do you enhance the teaching presence online? How do you enhance the instructor presence online? So, like in any classroom, your task as a teacher online remains the same, which means before you go in for an online class, you plan session objectives, you have to decide the content, you decide which platform you're going to use, and whatever you choose, be familiar with technology. Again, don't experiment too much with one batch because even students need to adapt and learn. So let them get familiar with one thing. And if you want to experiment with another batch. So it's easier when they get used to it, they know where your lectures are going to be, where your assignments are going to be. So that kind of thing. And just like the classroom, you have to be available. This doesn't mean that you're going to be online all the time, but you have to tell them that yes, I will answer within 24 hours. This is my email. This is where you contact me, or this is the discussion board where you put your questions. And what kind of learning are you going to give? You have to give them constructive feedback, which means don't be too strict, don't be too negative, and you know how to give feedback. I don't have to tell you. Second is give ensure active learning, which means give them things to do, give them things to think about, give them things to actually involve them in their learning so that they become more enthusiastic about it. It's important to communicate high expectations and keep the motivation high. And this is because if you lower expectations, if you lower the challenges, then students get bored. But then again, think about the diversity of students in your class and think about how to engage even the slow learners and the ones who are good. And of course, at the end of it, assessment is the key. Dr. Chinmay will be taking that next Saturday, so I won't go into it. But assessment is an integral part of planning this session. So one important thing which I cannot emphasize enough is that you must create the right climate for learning. If your environment, your online learning environment is open, it's transparent, it helps. And first thing which comes here is knowing your students. In a classroom, just like you have to make the effort to know people's names, even online, you have to know people's names. It helps if you ask them to put up their pictures. When I was a student doing an online course in Maastricht, the first day all our pictures were clicked and it was circulated to all the teachers. So everybody had that PDF sheet with pictures of students. So you could put a face to a name. It's important to build a rapport, which means that you need to be a little friendly and a little informal online, but set your boundaries. So you have to be a little chatty. You cannot be very strict and formal. You have to model disclosure, which means trying to be a little funny, trying to laugh at yourself. And one of the things you will realize when you go online is that you have to say, I don't know, several times, more than the classroom. The classroom, you might not ask them to, you might not allow them to ask questions, but once there is a chat box next to your lecture, you will have students asking lots of questions. And some of them will definitely be beyond your reach. So it's quite comfortable to say, I don't know, but tell them that you're going to find out and come back. And when you say that, keep that commitment. Come back and tell them what you know. As I said before, provide them contact details. Tell them when you're available, but ask them to respect your privacy. They can't just call you up anytime. So give them a time slot or tell them whether you're going to be available on WhatsApp or email or wherever, and tell them which time is going to be suitable for you. I've talked enough about risk-free expression. Allow students to ask questions. Set the ground rules. Sometimes when you start becoming friendly with students, they take it for granted. So even though you are online, you have to know that what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. And online, you will find this happening quite frequently. The anonymity of being in the background sometimes creates unpleasant experiences where you will encounter um, wrong pictures coming up on your screen and things like that. So be prepared, but whenever something like that happens, um, stop it right there. The pace and the vibe is important. When you're in a classroom, you can see students' faces and you know whether you're going at the right speed or not. Now, I'm not able to see all of you, so I don't know whether all of you are understanding or whether I'm going too fast. So that is a genuine problem here. Um, where you don't know what is happening. So it's important to go back to students again and again and ask them whether it is right for them or whether they understood, you want them to repeat something. That's important. And even though it's online, students tend to get a little complacent. You tend to get a little complacent. So deadlines have to be mandatory. If I say this assignment has to be given in 4 days, at the end of 4 days, I must receive it. That strictness is important because otherwise, as it is, if we are going through a lockdown, we are getting lazy. So if you are going to it's like a kite. So if you're going to, that kite string has to be, have to know when to loosen the string and when to make it tighter. That's very important as a teacher, whether it's in the classroom or in the online classroom. The third myth is that to teach online, you need to be a great orator. No, absolutely not. Not everybody is a good orator in the classroom as well. We all come with different strengths. And it's important as a teacher to know what your strengths are. Or a lot of us are conscious about coming online. What will I look like? Does my face look okay? Do I look nice online? Is my voice clear? Is my voice not clear? Is my English good? We all struggle with it. And English is nobody's mother tongue in this place. Now, what you need to know is you have to identify your strengths. There are teachers who have never been good speakers, good orators, but they have succeeded well online because they have made students think. So understand what you are, allow your personality to shine through. Don't hide behind the internet. So it's important that whatever your personality is, that comes through, and the students are able to interact and realize that you're present there. So I would say, whatever tool you use, be comfortable with it. Practice is the solution. Practice until you're perfect. It's important to use a different mix of methods, but don't make a khichdi out of it. Don't use all the tools in one class. So how many things you can use in one class is important for you to decide judiciously, like you make a lesson plan in the classroom. There's this statement which I really love, which is from Chickering and Gamson's 7 Principles for Good Practice in Undergraduate Education. And it says that learning is not a spectator sport. It's not a badminton or a tennis match where you sit and keep looking at where the teacher is walking in the classroom or what's happening. So just like you can't concentrate on this webinar after 20 minutes, students can't concentrate either. So what you need to do is give students breaks and give them a chance to do something. So this is how you plan your lecture. And engage in active learning. So active learning, there are 1,000 definitions, but what I like is this definition, which says doing what we think and thinking about what we are doing. So when you're learning, you have to be completely involved. If you're teaching a classroom, you need to first start from the baseline, see what the student already knows, and build up from that. You need to build those networks in the mind. So especially in health professions, your neural networks have to work. They have to learn about algorithms. They have to learn about different ways of engaging. So it's important that at each moment, you give students a chance to reflect, to catch up and build those links with what they've already learned, and to improve that understanding. So how do we do this? So online time is valuable. So what you can do is ask them to study before and use this valuable online time to clarify doubts, to build concepts, and to do higher order learning. Our students are very intelligent. So instead of using this time to just deliver the content, send them the content, ask them to read on their own, and whatever doubts they have, or if there is a conceptual thing where you or a framework which needs an explanation, then you come in here. Challenge students about the higher order questions, not just the what and the what questions. Also ask them about the how and the why question. Sometimes it's easy to give them a self-assessment module. When you're sitting here and you have 200 students there, what you can do is, you can't probably correct all of that. So self-assessment modules, I think Chinmay will take, but I'll tell you one or two. So, or ask them to present a submit work which they have created, which is more challenging. So I'm going to give you some apps which you'll find useful. One is you can do polls. So whether it is Zoom, whether it is Moodle, I think every place they have opportunities for polls. So the poll can be either in the form of yes, no, do you agree, disagree, or you can use them to have MCQs. So all of this can be done. If you don't have any of those, there are these two softwares. One is Poll Everywhere and second is Mentimeter. You can go to them, create these polls, and they can be used for assessment before the class. So before you start, you ask some questions and you know where the baseline knowledge is. Like today, I started off by asking you, what do you understand by student engagement? So if you know what the baseline level is, you can build up from there. Second is between the class, where you want to know whether they're understanding. Are they with you, or or is everything gone above their heads? So the second, that is there. And after sessions, of course, to assess whether they have learned or not. Students are big fans of games, internet games. So gamification apps are the trend, and you all know Kahoot. Similar to that is quizzes, and Go Soapbox is another software, another app which allows you the something like an audience response system or a clicker in class. So it has facilities for interactivity. Um, this gaming device is something like Kaun Banega Crorepati. So what you do in that is you give them MCQs, and it comes on the student's mobile or their emails, and they can start using this quiz. Now this gives you a leaderboard option. So which student has got how much score? So you can add up all this, and it's fun for the students to top that list. So that kind of challenge works. Socrative is another app which has facilities for polls, MCQs, true and false questions. And there is this app called Answer Garden, where you can ask students of what you think, and all their answers will come up, and the whole word cloud is found. So I have given you a number of software. So this is a QR code. If you pick up your mobile and if you focus on this QR code, I have given you a sheet which you can save. And these are all the apps, some of the apps which I've just mentioned here. So I'm just holding it for 20 seconds. When you're done, just let me know. So you can pick up your mobiles and scan this QR code, and this document will come to you. You can save it. Are you done, or you want the code again? Can I change this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Right. So I'm just giving you a few examples. This is from our Moodle. So when you make MCQs, don't make straight one-line MCQs. Make them scenario-based. So this is, I'm a pathologist, so this is a pathology MCQ where I am asking the question about the action of aspirin. But here, or rather, I want to ask a question about inflammation. But I'm using the example of aspirin here, like a medical student attending too many PowerPoint presentations had a headache, and what you should do. So use scenario based, which makes things application based, and that allows for higher order learning. The second is you can a facility which is available with online is you can ask questions which have videos, X-rays, pictures, ECGs, whatever you want. Now these things are feasible, very easy to do it. And the other thing is you can put your feedback for each of the choices of the MCQs. So even if a student marks the wrong answer, there is feedback of why that answer is wrong. But if the student says a correct answer, then you have the answer. You can also put in page numbers to read if they have not done it properly. So these facilities are available. Coming to the third part, which is how do you enhance social presence online? Remember, students should not feel isolated. So what we have to do is to introduce opportunities for cooperation and collaboration. So in this model which I talked about, I've already talked about the first part, which is the student interacting with the content, the teacher providing the content in the form of tutorials, simulations, games, and all that. How you communicate can be synchronous or asynchronous. The last part is how should students collaborate with students. So collaborative learning, and how can you do that? So the easiest thing to do is to use discussion boards. Now discussion boards can be even done on your email, but remember, you have to assess this. Otherwise, discussions go haywire. So the art of facilitation of online discussions is something that teachers have to learn. Remember that you grade students depending upon the quality of the post they put, not on the number. Otherwise, everybody writes any nonsense and you can't give marks. So learning and posts have to be substantial. Promote deeper learning. Don't ask them to cut and paste from somewhere. Everybody will do the same thing. So ask them an applied question where they have to use whatever they have learned and give you a complete synthesis of what they have learned. So get a good facilitation is where you withdraw to the background, and then the students start discussing with each other. In the initial phase of any discussion, of course, as a teacher, you have to be ahead. But later, a good discussion is when they start discussing and you are in the background. So have incentives of participation, and there will be marks or grades for it. Intervene wherever necessary, because students tend to get sarcastic, they tend to get rude with each other. So it can hurt people. So you have to set the boundaries and be there whenever necessary. When it's two big groups like 200 or 100, it doesn't work. So you divide that large group into small groups, and you can have either your PGs or residents or your faculty in each group, and use these discussion boards. We published a paper about group dynamics in social interaction. If you take a picture of this QR code, it will take you to this paper. So you can use your mobile phones, and if you want to download this paper, uh, this you can use this QR code and download this paper. I'll wait for a few seconds. Can I move ahead?
Yes, Dr. Anshu.
Okay, fine. So the way you can give group work is that most of these apps have breakout rooms. I think Zoom also has it, Moodle also has it. So you can divide students into different groups, and then give them a task and then ask them to come back. So it's possible to have small group discussions in the breakout room. You can time them. I think most, whether it is Google Meet or whether it's Moodle or whether it is any of these, all of them have that. A jigsaw method is ask students, give them different things to learn, and then ask the students to come back and teach their part. So it's like putting the pieces together of a jigsaw where everybody presents one part, and as a whole, the whole group learns. If you have done problem-based learning, it is possible to do it online, and I have some experience in that. You can. It's fun to do online role plays. So where everybody takes in one part, maybe one person plays a student, one person plays a patient, one person plays a relative, and you can still go in and do a role play like that. And projects, of course, help in group work and collaboration, where you ask them to collaborate online. As a student in Maastricht, I was asked to collaborate internationally, where one student was in Turkey, one was in South Africa, one was in Thailand, and we still managed to do the job. So it's quite feasible to do things like this online because things become very easy. Now, having said all this, you will still find students who will not respond, who will not. It's like in your classroom, you have some front benchers and back benchers. There will be back benchers also here in your online classes. Now, if you want, you can reach out to them privately to find out whether they are learning. Sometimes students are quiet, but they are learning, and sometimes they might genuinely have some problem. So usually the problems are either that they find it too tough, they might have some technical problems, or they might find it too challenging. Whatever it is, try to find out. Student issues is that internal motivation can become low if you're online. So you have to provide that external motivation, giving assignments, giving them incentives to work, and also time management. So so respect that everybody has a different way of learning, and give them a chance, give them other opportunities to for learning. So this paper, I have put the QR code again. I want all of you to go back and read this paper. These are called the 7 principles for good practice in undergraduate education, Chickering and Gamson. And these 7 principles have to be used whether it is in the classroom or in the online classroom. So can I change it, or are you still using the QR code to download this paper? Tell me when you're done.
We can go ahead, ma'am.
Right. So the 7 principles of online of good practice are that student faculty contact should be encouraged. There should be reciprocity and cooperation between students. Encourage active learning. Give prompt feedback. Emphasize deadlines. Communicate high expectations, and respect diverse talents and ways of learning. All these findings are important to create a favorable learning environment. Since you are from public health, I have an example here. My institute, Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Medical Sciences, is a premier institute which works in community oriented medical education. And I thought when you go on and do your dental surveys and all, this example will be useful to you. So what we have is a village adoption scheme. Our students spend some 15 days in the villages where they stay with them. So this is that module, that online module. So this notice board tells you what the course is. This tells you about the concept, and this is where we ask them to share their stories. So what we did was we had this board and we gave them a template to write reflections of what they were learning in the village. So this is all the learning objectives are given both to the students and the faculty. The resources are given. Now you have facilities to open whichever module you want the students to do. We don't give it all that at the time. If this week they are going to study about environment, housing, and water supply, I will open up only this much. So it is like that. Now what they do here is, in the village, they collect some data from their families. So this all the data is entered by each student on this website, on this Moodle platform. And at the end of the whole 15 days, we have the data of the whole village available with us. So if I want to go in and look at that data, and I know that there are a number of students with dental caries here, and probably this is where it needs health education. So I will send my students to give health education here. If I find that there is a problem with sanitation, the focus will change there. So you can create group projects depending upon this data here. So this is the same thing. We also ask them to submit their reflections. These are all students who have sent in their reflections, what they felt when they went to the village. These are all students writing about these reflections. Now we allow them to write in Hindi or Marathi or whatever language they want, because English might not be helpful for every student here. Now, some more things we should do. Here, we have students from all over India, so they don't know Marathi. So the students themselves have created a clinical dictionary for Marathi to English or English to Marathi. We give them quiz and assessment for what they have learned. So a good module will have all these elements. And these are the best practices which students have submitted, what they learned in the village, and this is what is created by the students themselves. So I'd like to end by saying that a good teacher does not expect a student to take his knowledge. A good teacher nudges his students in the right direction so that they can discover knowledge for themselves. Thank you so much. And I'm now open to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Anshu. May I request the members if they have any questions? Dr. Sahana has a question. Dr. Sahana, you please ask. Dr. Sahana, you can unmute and go ahead.
Meanwhile,
okay.
There's QR code here. Please give me feedback on the session. You just click this and it will take you to a 2-question feedback form. So please go ahead.
Ma'am, can you close your presentation so that we can see the people raising hands?
I've just left it here because can you all just click this once and then I can remove this. This is a feedback form. If you download it with your QR code, yeah, done, I'll stop sharing.
Done. Done.
Fine. Right. Any questions now? One second, I'll just correct the QR form. Please go ahead with your questions.
I think Dr. Anshu, the QR code says it is not accepting feedback.
Okay, I'll just start it once.
No problem. No problem.
Please go ahead with the questions.
I'm looking for Dr. Sahana Hegde. Madam said she has some question.
Ma'am, I think Dr. Divya has raised her hand.
Ha. Shall I think Dr. Sahana wants to know, Dr. Anshu, it's a question from Dr. Sahana.
Yes.
Is breakout room a regular feature of Zoom?
A regular feature of Zoom. Yes, it is.
Yes, yes.
Yes, it is.
But it is available only in the premium version, not in the 40-minute limited version.
Right, you need to purchase. Yeah. Dr. Sahana, I think you got the answer. It is not available in the free version. It is only the paid version that you get the splitting of rooms.
So just take the QR code now. I've opened it up for responses for the feedback form. I'll just remove it later. It will open now. Any more questions?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
Ma'am, I tried to download this Kahoot app that you suggested.
Yes.
It was showing that it's a paid and premium version needs to be downloaded.
Yeah, there might be a trial version now, and in the lockdown they had given sometime free. But I think some parts of it are premium versions. Some parts are still free. So I think most of them in the lockdown period till last month, they were all free. But now I think because they've realized their value, some of them might not be free.
Are there any free online resources for this, ma'am?
For what? Kahoot is there, Socrative is there.
Okay.
I think you downloaded it, right? I gave you the document there. I gave you the
No, I
document.
just tried only for Kahoot, not for other apps.
I think
I'll do that and get back.
yeah. If you've downloaded the document, you can still get it.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. This was the link.
Dr. Chandrasekhar and Dr. Vamshi, are we sharing the recorded version with everybody?
Yeah, we'll be sharing a link to them after this.
Okay, okay. Thank you. I think some of them are asking for it. We will be sharing. All right. Thank you.
Dr. Anshu ma'am, I have one question, ma'am.
Yes.
Actually, I just wanted to know if, like in Google Meet, what we use, like if we give the MCQs to the people, so based on the MCQs, the answers what we get, the responses what we get from the people, or from the students, can we know about the name of the student also, the person who has responded in that?
It depends on which app you're using. If some of them are anonymous, which makes it easy in the class and comfortable for the students, like the polls, that is anonymous. But there are some like Socrative, the settings are available in most.
Okay. Google Meet also have a setting for that?
Google Meet, I haven't tried too much, but I think it gives a general poll. It doesn't give you the exact who has said what.
It doesn't give about the name of the student who has.
No, in Moodle, I can do it. I can create an MCQ thing. But interactivity in the classroom, I don't think they give you names because it's not comfortable for students to give the names of what. If it's an assessment, you can do. Sometimes you can use Google Forms. You know Google Forms? Yeah. So Google Forms can be used for assessment. There is another small tick mark you have to put somewhere for assessment, and it allows that. Sometimes for assessment, you can add something called Tinify, which gives you a webcam. So the students are not cheating. So with that thing, you can actually see the Tinify, Tinnify. I'll just type it down here.
Oh, no.
Okay, so it's probably paid a little, but if you're using it for the institute or something, you can use it. It's a add-on which you can use, and that can be done. Another one which can be used by universities is called Respondus Lockdown Browser. So this is expensive, of course. Now, what it does is when you're giving an MCQ test, it closes, it locks down the student's laptop. So he can only see your MCQ page. He can't search Google. He can't go to another website. So that kind of facility is a privacy or security issue. I think security issues Chinmay will talk about next week.
Dr. Anshu?
Yeah?
Dr. Aruna has a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Dr. Aruna, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Like I have a question. Even the Slido app can be used for the quiz as well as the time-bound quizzes and the polls also.
Yeah, what is it? Just spell it out for me. I don't know this one. SL?
Slido.com.
Okay.
SLIDO. There like apps are there. So that particular app can be used for the polls also and MCQs also, and it's a closed group, and wherein you can put the question and it will be there for the, and it would be an interactive poll also there.
Right. There are a number of things. See what suits you. I mean, the purpose is to get engaged with the student. So how you do it, it depends.
Thank you, Dr. Aruna. Dr. Ram Prasad has a question for you, Dr. Anshu.
Dr. Anshu, very informative presentation. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was really very helpful, very practical insights. Thank you. One question, ma'am, what is the role of the institution in the sense of most of these available at the individual level, or does the institution need to support some of these because the networking issues and all that? What is the arrangement that needs to be set in from the institution side, and which are the apps that actually need institution support? Any information on that, ma'am?
Right. So I think I would advocate institutional support, because everybody does everything in a fragmented way. It doesn't usually work. So
Right.
we started long ago and we took up Moodle. The Moodle
Right.
is a free software, but
Right.
it needs a server. So if you have a good IT team which can integrate it with your online college website, it works
Right.
very well.
Okay.
At the moment, you have a course going on Moodle called learnmoodle.org. So all
Okay.
of you can do that course if you're interested. It's on at the moment.
Okay.
Now that allows you, it's completely free, and it needs a bit of training for that. And
Okay.
it needs somebody technical to install it on the server. Once
Okay.
that is done, you will need one institutional coordinator or somebody who will be deciding who has what kind of access. So that is helpful because like if it's one batch, I put
Right.
in all the emails of the students. So it's one click and it goes to the whole batch.
Right.
And I can restrict access. Like this resource is accessible to this 2018 batch or 19 batch or one department, and which
Right.
level of person has which access, controls, privacy. All that can be controlled.
Right.
The other thing which is available for institutes is Google Suite.
Okay.
So this is something which institutions can write to Google and get it.
Okay.
This allows you to get free institutional emails for everybody. That's
Okay.
what we have done. We have around 2,000 emails available for the institute, and every student has a MJIMS email ID. So
Okay.
I don't have to go and ask students. Once I click it, almost everybody's name, and I get the email on my own.
All
Things
right.
like that work. And it has a good Moodle has a record, so a
Okay.
record of attendance, assessment. So all that has to be stored in some place. You can't do
Right.
today's Zoom and you have a free version and tomorrow it disappears. It doesn't work like that. So
Right.
place to submit, if it's integrated in one place, students know that here this is my discussion board. All the
Right.
discussions are going to be saved here. Resources
Right.
for this topic are kept here. Pictures are kept here. Videos are links. You could just put in the URL of the YouTube links in that place.
Right.
So, so it always works to have an institutional site where, like, even if it's your own department, all your department members know what other teachers are doing.
Right.
So it helps, definitely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Dr. Anshu,
Yes.
you have a question from Dr. Upendra.
Yeah.
Dr. Upendra wants to know if you can elaborate regarding the best app considering data safety issue.
I'm not a technical person. I'm an educational person, and data safety in what sense? Moodle is pretty safe. Moodle is pretty safe. I think Google, with its reputation, should be safe. Google Suite.
I think he is mainly talking about the video conferencing software, ma'am, with the background of Zoom having
Then
issues.
then Jyotsna, you take up that question. That's your thing. Okay.
The Zoom is also working on its private security issues. So there is no such thing as a fail-safe software. It is the fail-safe practices we need to adopt, as in having a proper meeting ID, a proper password, becomes a lot more important in ensuring the security of the data we have. And also look at the performance, look at the ratings, look at the reviews for the particular software you're choosing to use, and the platforms on which it is available and how it can be integrated. So that should very much help you out there.
And the free versions are usually not that safe. If you have a paid version, probably a premium version would probably be safer.
So,
Yes.
in fact, we are using a safe and paid version. I had a very close interaction with Zoom people, myself and Dr. Pushpanjali and the scientific committee. Now the Zoom level, it is level 5 encryption, so it is very safe. That's what was promised and assured. And I think there are a few questions from Dr. Rajesh and Priya Krishna and others. Pushpanjali, madam, please look in.
Yeah.
We have a question from Dr. Arun.
Yeah, Dr. Arun.
He says, why not support local, like vocal and Indian apps such as Say Namaste, etc.?
No one's stopping you.
Local,
That was straight.
local.
Okay. Yes, yes, Dr. Arun. I hope you've got your answer. Shall we move on to Dr. Vinay? Dr. Vinay has a question.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yes.
Wonderful presentation.
Yes, Vinay.
You have muted yourself.
You have to
Good evening,
unmute.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Wonderful presentation. We were lucky to have a faculty development program just before this COVID outbreak. So that gave us an insight into these various apps and online tools which we can use for teaching purposes. So we were also very enthusiastic, started using these apps and quizzes online and in our classes. It didn't reflect on the student performance when it comes to the internal scores and how they were faring in their exams. So anyway, where we were going wrong, or what was going wrong in the process of teaching them, in spite of using all these new technologies, we were not able to assess. So it is something which even we need a motivation towards when we are trying something new. If it is working well, we are more happy to use it. So that is what we felt, that these things are not giving us the results which we expected. So anywhere that we were going wrong or something, if you can share your insights in that.
I didn't get your question clearly, but you want me to know the process of how we went through it?
The thing is, like, using these apps and this new technology is not giving us the results which we desired or which I expected.
Right, right. So the thing is, try not to do too much in one go. So what I'm talking about Moodle is something we started 5 years ago. It's not something we started now. If we were now, it wouldn't have worked. So what we did was we spent 4 Saturdays for one group of teachers, where we trained teachers, and we trained everybody from the senior most, from the dean to everybody else. So 100 teachers were almost trained, and we spent Saturday afternoons 3 or 4 hours each, where every teacher was trained in different aspects of Moodle, and they did not get a certificate until they prepared their own course. So there were different ways of doing it. So sometimes you need a stick, sometimes you need a carrot. So some kind of thing, because not everybody is going to be equally technology savvy. The second aspect is everybody has teaching troubles. So you have to be persistent. And I like the example which says that you have to treat people like pista. So some pistas you can open easily, some pistas will take time to open. So handle those which are easy to open first, and then the rest will fall in line too. So you will have people who like innovations, you will have people who don't like innovations, but eventually sabko karna to padega. Everybody has to do this.
Okay.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, Dr. Rajesh has a question there.
Okay. Okay.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Thank you for your wonderful lecture. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. My question is similar to the previous question in terms of active involvement and participation from the students, because we tried flipped classroom once, and the response was not as much as we would want it to be. And even with the other active learning strategies, initially the response is not as good as it should be. We want some insights from your practical experience.
Right. So my experience has been quite the opposite. The students were sitting on our heads that please take lectures, we're getting bored in the lockdown. So that they were more enthusiastic, and before I even logged into my online software, they were there telling me, ma'am, mute yourself or do this or do that. They knew more than me. So that was the experience. But I find that the concentration span with online lectures is poor, because even now when we are being bombarded by webinars, you find it's difficult to do it. So how you structure it has to be differently. So don't focus too much on the online aspects. Fit in assessment there, that there has to be grades given, have to be given marks there, and only when you do all of it together will students respond to it. And we presume that students need transfer of knowledge, that you have to sit there and teach them. Probably that is not what they need. We have to change our mindsets. They probably need us to help them to facilitate their learning. So things to read, you can give them yourself. where you need to engage them is to ask them to do something challenging. So that works. So I think to get their engagement, you need to be actually doing active learning. So change the way you think rather than expecting them to change. Somewhere,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, and there's one small, one other related question is, now we are living in this era of evidence-based practices. Just wanted to know if are there any systematic reviews or meta-analysis which indicate that all these newer learning strategies are effective in the outcomes can be student grades or anything. So do we have any evidence?
I haven't gone into this area completely, but assessment of anything is important because assessment drives learning. I think there is enough evidence that assessment drives learning. And I think next week when Chinmay discusses it, you will. It's important to complement teaching with assessment. Unless there is that, what should I say, the pot of gold or the end of the rainbow. Why am I chasing? What am I chasing? So, and the second aspect I would like to say is don't make students learn for exams. That's something very horrible that we all do, that they learn to the exam. So either make your exams more learner oriented and don't, because the kind of exams you design depends on how the students are going to learn. If you're going to ask cramming questions which require cramming or memorization, the students are going to get definitely bored. You ask them applied kind of questions, get them to do things, and the way they learn completely changes. So that from surface learning, it becomes into a deep learning. So exams, you have that whole, what should I say, the Brahmastra in your hand. The exam is your Brahmastra there. And use it judiciously and they will work. Okay. And students have to know what kind of exams you're going to ask them. So if you're going to ask a long question on something, or one word thing, they're going to mug up something. But same thing, you put it in a clinical scenario, a patient with this, and what is the mechanism behind this, or what is the pathogenesis, or what is the management you will do. You are asking for applied information. So that will definitely work.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Ma'am, I think Hiremat sir has a question, ma'am.
Yes.
Hiremat sir?
Hello.
Yes, sir. So please go ahead, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Can you hear me, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, but the entire, madam, thank you very much. It's a neat of the hour, very informative information you've given. But the only thing is, as a teacher, I'm asking how to create that kind of a very positive energy among the students in the absence of a physical contact, eye-to-eye contact, emotional contact, and a body language. So all these can be molded in a e-learning or a virtual learning and making them more interested.
Did I sound enthusiastic today?
Yes, madam, it was good. From my point of view, it was good.
then you can also do it. It doesn't require too much. But yes, you have to be a little net savvy in some ways, because I find that some people are good online, some people have it difficulty. So design tasks which you are comfortable with. So maybe sometimes you ask them to submit an assignment. Sometimes you ask them to get onto a discussion board and do something. I do things like at the beginning of this lockdown, I asked them to watch a movie. And from that movie, I asked them to discuss about the virus spread. So it doesn't have to be textbookish. I just asked them to go and watch that movie, that Malayalam movie, Virus, which talked about the Nipah thing. And we had a great discussion on how epidemic spread and how you trace contacts and all that. So you use your creativity. That's the only limit, how creative you get.
Okay, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Dr. Anshu. I think we have one question from Dr. Priya. Dr. Priya?
Ma'am, you can proceed to next person, Akila Ganesh and Charu Purana.
Yes, yes. Dr. Akila?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm Dr. Akila from Ramchandra Institute of Higher Education. Actually, in art institute, in adventures, initially we were doing art.
Not audible. You're not audible. Can you do something with your problem?
No, ma'am.
Just speak. Okay, speak slowly. I'll just try to find out.
Okay.
No.
In our institute, we followed our own way of online teaching, and like 2 weeks back, they told us all to come to use in Google Meet. And then now they have told us to do it in Moodle. LMS Moodle we are doing it. I have a doubt. Like, is LMS in Moodle, is it only for blended learning? And I mean, what is the difference basically in Google Meet and Moodle? Are they all the same? Or like in Moodle they have told us to upload videos in small, I mean not a full session, as parts. So one lecture is split into 3 or 4 parts. So it comes as a platform for a blended learning.
I didn't get your question completely. You said Moodle and comparing it with what?
Google.
Google. So
yeah, actually both have been told by the institute. They've all given us common IDs and passwords, and they have told us to use as per that.
I'm not sure I understood your question completely, but you're asking blended learning. So blended learning is where you're going to mix classroom learning with online learning. Yeah. So you can use Moodle in any way you want. In the beginning, before the lockdown, we were using it in the form of blended learning, where classroom work was given and then some work was given on Moodle for online work. But now when the students are not available here, they're at home, we're using it completely for online learning. So there is how you design your assessments and your structure your content, that will make the difference. And Google also, Google has just introduced Google Meet, which is now free. So for 100 students, I think it is like, so yeah. So I have not used Google Classroom too much. I don't find it as friendly, but because there are things, but it depends on experience. I think whatever you have, you can use.
Okay. As you said, they are just working on making the format of each group in the Moodle platform. We were discussing with Dr. Ramprasad, I guess. So they have combined each year. I think that's the technical part they are taking care, and they have told us to select the cohort and upload our videos to whomever cohort it is doing.
Right. So you can do all that. We also have a button or a system called Big Blue Button in Moodle, which allows us to take the online lectures. That is possible. Or you can take direct lectures or live lectures.
Okay. Actually, in Google Meet we are taking direct lectures, but in Moodle they have told us to record it and upload it. They have not told us
what you can do, Dr. Akila, is there is an add-on in Moodle. You have to just download that extra. It's called Big Blue Button. So use Big Blue Button, and you can do an live lecture also. We're using it all the time in Moodle. Big Blue Button. Right?
Dr. Pushpanjali, Dr. Nidhi Kruti and Dr. Charu Purana has questions.
Yes. Dr. Nidhi?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful session. It was really very informative. Ma'am, I wish to ask that there have been times when I have sent assignments to the students. The problem that I face is in getting the answers, like if they have replied on WhatsApp. So it becomes a whole string of messages which I need to correct and then respond back to them. And what can be a better way for that?
So I wouldn't advise assignments to be received on WhatsApp, because one student sees it and then other people can copy it. So I don't know if that works. So a simpler way would be to use Google Forms.
Okay.
So Google Forms, you can use it to create either short answer questions or MCQs. And if you want them to submit documents, it can come as an attachment to a Word document or a PDF document, whatever you want. And that facility is available. Or you go to Google Classroom and create your own thing and integrate it with the Google Forms. So that's simple.
Okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
I see a question in the chat from Dr. Sahana. It says, how much does the college or the university have to invest in this? To be honest with you, Moodle installing it in the server costs us nothing because it's free, and a technical person did that for us. The only money we spent was in the training workshops. That was, we had some chai nashta for all the 100 people for that training purposes, but otherwise we didn't spend anything on that.
Thanks, Dr. Anshu. There's one more question from Dr. Charu. Is Dr. Charu there? Dr. Charu? All right, there's one question from Dr. Sanjay. Does practical part of learning is a better alternative in e-learning?
That is a big problem, and I don't have a solution. A lot of people have told me that they're experimenting with clinical training and clinical work online, but I'm not completely satisfied with it. I would suggest that AHPE has done a lot of webinars. Please go to ahpe.in. That's our website. So we have at least I think a list of 15 different webinars done in the last few months. So one or two topics will be there, which talk about how you can do clinical work on. Mostly it is done in the form of recorded videos and things like that. So what I've seen with clinical work, assessment part, some people have shown me, or training part. So they have taken videos of students, of patients, and shown it to students. There are privacy issues with that and how you do that. I think more than real cases, simulated cases where you create a paper case, show a video or an X-ray or whatever you need, compile it together and create your artificial cases. That works better. People have tried OSPE and OSVI, where they have talked about objective structured virtual examination. So they have actually gone to Zoom and done breakout rooms, or each breakout room there is a simulated patient and you can do a history taking. So you can do a bit of history taking online. I just heard last week about a site called Skill Gym. So skill as in SKILL, GYM as in gym. So it is a site, Skill Gym, which allows you to create training videos for conversation. So if you have to teach things like professionalism, ethics, you can have interactive videos available. So a lot of virtual interactive sites are available, but I still don't know how you can do palpation or things like that. Even auscultation, you can probably hear heart sounds, but it's not the real thing. So simulation, but to an extent. I'm not very satisfied with it.
Dr. Anshu, I think the questions are stopped and there are a whole lot of compliments flowing in that the session was excellent. So on behalf of all the members, I would like to thank personally, thank you very much for sparing your time and sharing so much of your experience and rich resources, sharing about your own institution, your sharing on the community-based education was just excellent. And I think we will be in touch with you to learn more about it. Thanks to Jyotsna also. Dr. Vamshi, do you want to say something?
Thank you so much. I had lots of fun doing this.
We too enjoyed. Dr. Chandrasekhar?
Yeah.
Yeah, please. You can conclude the session. Dr. Anshu, Dr. Chandrasekhar is our chairperson, scientific committee. Please, Dr. Chandrasekhar.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Anshu. It was a very excellent presentation and a lot of thoughts were there for us to, in these challenging times, how to use our technology in teaching. Thank you so much, and I think it was a fruitful experience for everybody. Hope to have a contact with you for some other information which we want to seek with you. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. We'll meet next Saturday for the different session on assessment. Thank you all.
Thanks, Vamshi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.